We know throughout history, people write letters, government officials document things for all sorts of reasons. What is your view of what it means that above and beyond Mueller making these new public remarks today, Julia and other reporters here are getting a hold of a one-pager that tries to drill down on the daylight between him and Barr on this question?
It seems to be a very dignified, dare I say, waspy way of setting the record straight. And clearly Director Mueller disagrees with the way the Attorney General, who I think it's entirely fair to say was acting more as a lawyer for Donald Trump than he was the chief law enforcement officer of the United States in the past 6 weeks or whatever it is. Clearly, Director Mueller wants the record to be clear that the report, he believes, was mischaracterized by the Attorney General. And I think that, again, historically, we're going to have to spend a lot of time realizing and thinking about going forward the role of the Attorney General in trying to keep the checks and balances and the divided sovereignty of the constitutional order in place. This has been a case where basically Donald Trump was able to have the Justice Department, or at least the Attorney General of the United States, function as his defense lawyer. And I think we saw that with the initial press conference from General Barr, where he kept saying no collusion, no collusion. And we know from reading the report that that wasn't even a legal concept they were pursuing. It's, to some extent, Ari, and I wonder if you agree with this, it's almost as though the lawyers, Mueller and his team, are in a knife fight, and Barr and Trump brought a gun to that knife fight. They're adjudicating this in the public square in a way that is better for headlines, better for broad public impression. But when you actually read the report, which I think was the director's main point, one of his main points this morning, is read what we said. And fewer people do that. And so to some extent, the Mueller team, and I hate to speak of it in terms of this kind of conflict, but this is where we are, the Mueller team has been outgunned.
Well,
and
John,
here's the
let me build on your point and hand it back to you, because you put it very well. And another way to say it is, Bob Mueller brought a book to a Twitter fight. And the book the book is so methodical that this new document we have, and I'll read from it in a moment, but the new document quotes not only Mueller's draft statement, which is new, that's why we're covering this breaking news, it also covers quotes from the report that very carefully and exhaustively imagined and prepared for this very debate. And yet, John, what you're arguing, I think without fear or favor, you're not saying you like that the politics is working this way, but you're arguing that at a very basic level, if Congress is the adjudicator and they have constituents, the person waving a book in the face of misleading tweets that might carry the headlines is at a disadvantage no matter how good their prosecutors are.
It's absolutely right. I mean, one of the things, without the risk of being overly clever, basically Mueller's also fighting not only Twitter, but what I sometimes think of as Chiron conservatives. You know, for the Chirons are the captions at the bottom of the screen. And
I've heard about these Chirons.
And it's basically the power of the Chiron is a really interesting force right now in our public life, because I have relatives who will come in and say things. I'm wondering, where on earth did they get them? And then I realize, well, it's from Fox Chirons, honestly.
Yeah, or in this case, and I'll let you keep going, but so viewers understand, we were just flashing the red Chiron, the banner on this screen. There it is. This is what you're saying moves things. And as you know, there are footnotes in the Mueller report that have date stamped of certain TV chirons that Donald Trump reacted to explore his state of mind as criminal evidence. I mean, we are through the looking glass, but on a day when Bob Mueller is trying to speak beyond the private confines of the Justice Department, I give you the final word to wrap us up on this issue.
The larger issue that we're going to be looking at forever, I think, in this country is Mueller has fact and reason on his side. Trump has emotion and narcissism on his side, aggrievement, victimhood. I am the victim of this witch hunt. And this struggle between the ideology of perpetual innocence on Trump's side and the role of reason and fact, which is supposed to be the guiding force of the American Revolution, going back to Jefferson, that struggle is perhaps the larger and more enduring one.
It's from Jefferson to Twitter. It's a lot to think through as the public has to decide whether it wants to, as you say, go beyond the headlines. That's clearly what Bob Mueller today is imploring them to do. Historian Jon Meacham, thank you for being part of our special coverage. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.